And so thanks again for making it out. You can please post any questions in the chat and they'll be addressed later on. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jean Main, the Regional Director for Enrollment Services.
Hello, good morning, everybody. We're really glad you could make it today. What we're talking about is the online course substitution form. We're going to show you all kinds of different things about it, how it works, how it functions, how it flows. We're glad you were able to make it today. So on our opening slide, I put in a little quote by Brian Tracy, who's a motivational speaker and author. And it says, practice a philosophy of continuous improvement, get a little bit better every single day. And that really does kind of describe our approach to forms. Our community and our community college community is new to the this Highland online form system. So we are going to get better at it every single day. And we appreciate your joining us on that ride. So today's agenda and goals. So our goal today is to review the workflow of the course substitution form. There have been no changes. So for some of you, you've seen this before, you've used it. For others, you may be seeing this for the first time. We're going to focus and highlight on changes based on the feedback we've received, and we've received quite a bit. So I'm really happy to say it's very much a joint effort. And then we'll provide some information about where to go to ask questions. If you have questions about the form, about the substitution, about the degree works part. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about that. Our agenda, again, is to review the online course substitution, the process of how it goes, its workflow. We'll look specifically at the form initiator sections and the view that person has. Then we'll look at the PC/DC section. We can also call that the first reviewer, if you like. Some people refer to it that way. And we're going to focus in on what's most important there and why. Then we're going to talk about the Dean of Faculty and Student, the second approver, if you will, and what's important for them to take notice of. And then again, as I said, where to direct questions. We want to make sure you have lots of resources and access to the information you need. So here's how the workflow goes. Typically, the form is initiated by someone who works in an advising capacity. So advising capacity, I've worked in advising capacity, so I have advising privileges. Advisors, guided pathway advisors, right, are one of the more likely folks that are going to submit this or initiate this, and faculty advisors. Then the form is received and reviewed by the campus's DC or PC for that program, then is routed to be reviewed by the campus dean of faculty. And then the form is reviewed and processed by the degree audit team. So each campus is assigned a degree audit technology specialist. And then last but not least, the student and advisor are notified of the course substitution status. Was it approved? Was it not approved? So here we start off. Where do I start the form? So this is a snip actually from my access to my CT State. So there's advisor online form section, and right now the course substitution form is there. By clicking this link, you enter into the first view of the course substitution form. And again, anybody who has an advising role with the system will have this particular card on my CT State. The initiator, the first pieces of information the initiator wants to go through are to fill out the required forms. In the ID field, one of the new functionalities we have is that there requires an @ symbol. So if you just put in an ID without the @ symbol, it won't proceed. You'll be asked to do it again. And I think it actually pops up and says, please use the @ symbol. What happens when you enter the @ symbol in student ID is the form pulls the student's email address, first and last name from Banner. You then answer, is the student graduating soon, report the campus and the student's program, CT State program, and of course, we submit, okay? Then the view will transition to the initiator view 2, which really gives where you provide most of the course detail for those of you who are advisors or thinking you'll be advising students. So you give us, the when, the where, the why, the how of the course, where it was taken, the course name and number. There's a space to put a link to the course description, which I would, recommend you doing. It's not required, but your deans may ask and request that be completed. Then a justification as to why you believe the substitution has academic merit. Okay, so you would put that in. And then some of the new stuff you're going to see here, first of all, by this bright dark red arrow, is this is now required. So there's an asterisk here where you assign the form to be reviewed by a department chair or program coordinator. Truly, everybody, that's defined by your campus. Who does your campus want to review as the first reviewer for this program? In most cases, it's going to be a department chair or a program coordinator. And the next field is for their email address. And again, a required field, as you can see, that's a change. And it's going to require an @ symbol. So in the past, I've gotten a few forms that just say the dean's name. Please send to, Tim St. James for as Nuntuck. Well, the form's not going to send it to just the name. It has to have the full email address of the dean, or I'm sorry, of the department chair or program coordinator, in order for this form to be moved to that person. And then you, as the advisor or faculty advisor, person in an advising capacity, put your name and email address there. So we just want you to notice that all the fields that are required now, many more than before, and the email format on the email address fields are now required. Okay, so from there, the PC or DC, who is named by the initiator, right? The initiator informs the form, tells the form where to send this email. And so we've made a few changes to this, and we got feedback from people that said, gee, it looks kind of fishy. It had the gold bar originally. So as you notice, the gold bar that indicates something, an email is coming from outside of our system, has been removed. You will also note that the no reply address is from the CT state domain, definitely providing a level of comfort for all of us. And it will actually place the name, the Outlook from the Active Directory of the person, of the PC or DC that's supposed to approve. Gives you the student name, and then the link to the course substitution form is named a little more intuitively. It now says access to the course substitution form, rather than, I think before it said click here to review, or a little less descriptive. And if more descriptive is helpful, we're absolutely about that. It now has a salutation or a sign off from the guided pathway advisors in the faculty advising team. And we've added the CT state logo. So all things that are really designed to give a level of comfort, so we don't need to notify IT that this is spam. It's because it's not. All right. A reminder email will be sent to PCs and DCs every 3 days if the form isn't reviewed and moved forward. So keep in mind, people will say, I just got an email. I got an email about this. I'm like, I got one the other day. I'm like, yep. And you will keep getting them every 3 days at that cadence until the form's completed. And so this is what the first approver, or our PC and DC, will see, and in their routing section as well. So in this instance, our department chair, program coordinator, completed their review, added notes, and directed it to the campus dean. So a couple of things of import. As you note in the blue banner here, we've renamed this to say campus department chair approval or program coordinator approval and routing, just to really kind of name the section a little better, so that so that people know what specifically to do. We've added a note section, which is, I think, a great piece of great information if there's anything you want to pass on to the dean. The initiators, the folks who initiate the form, have that justification section to work with. This one, actually, Dr. Barfield from Three Rivers, thank you so much, made this suggestion, so we thought it was a really good one. And thought it would be helpful information for everybody. So a great example, use this note section to communicate anything you want to the dean. This is the 10th substitution I've done for this student, or this is we're changing majors, and, or this needs to be rushed. Anything you feel like is pertinent to that particular situation. Always being mindful that any form we use, whether it's in paper or online, is FOIable. So you just want to be careful with your language there, always. As an example, something that would be perfect to put in here for a PC or DC to communicate to the dean is that they've spoken to Steve Marcellinus if we're working with a TAP major, because all TAP majors have to have a level of approval from Steve, and that can sometimes hold up the process. But so keep in mind that's what for our notes section, and you have a radial button with which to approve, and then again required fields for the dean's name and your dean's email address. And again, the email address has to have the @ symbol. And then, of course, submission. And this is what our dean of faculty or dean of faculty and students sees. This is their review. They are the second approver, the second person to look. And as you can see, we've changed the label sorry about that. We changed the label up in the blue banner for this section as well. We've made this name. This is where they electronically sign. So they cannot submit without signing and approving. Both those fields are required, and the date will self-populate. So once the dean reviews a substitution, they will be able to move it on to the degree technology specialist. And we thought, just for your information, this is what the degree technology specialist sees in the form. But as you see, they have this, sorry again. They have a slide bar. So they're going to see from the top to the bottom of this form. So they'll get to see all the academic information, all the notes, all the justifications, and all the approvals. And they use all that information in part of their assessment and entering the information into DegreeWorks. Another thing to mention here is that they can also decide for whatever, if they feel like they need a little bit more information, they can hold the form until they get the information they're looking for. So for example, if the student is in a TAP major and there has not been a discussion with Steve Marcellinus, you guys will be contacted by the DegreeWorks team to get that permission. Once it's received, once you document that, they'll move the form right along and put it through DegreeWorks. And one of my favorite things that everybody asks for, is the final correspondence. And that final correspondence goes out only after the DegreeWorks team has entered it into DegreeWorks and completed this form. And what the major change here is that initiators, so advisors, those in an advising capacity, will see the student's name, and they'll see which substitution has been approved or not approved, right? So that it's a way to track without giving access to the entire faculty, which generally isn't a great idea to do with a system if this is the only place where you interface with it. So we want to get you the information you need. So we're using this communication as a way of letting you know that a particular student's this particular substitution's been approved. Tips and questions. Oh, so many, right? So in terms of tips, obviously, I mentioned a couple times, TAP majors need to have an approval by Steve Marcellinus, and his email address is right there. Obviously, we put a lot of things in place in terms of making sure the form is completed, but we would ask that you double check your spelling, because the form can't check for spelling. So please keep an eye out for spelling, last names, email addresses. Also, if you see, I think I mentioned earlier, if you see multiple reminders to complete a course substitution form, use the most recent one and click on that link. So it's possible if you didn't get to a form in a week, you'll have 2 emails about the same form. use the one that's most recently sent to you. After you've completed a form, close out that browser. If you don't, it can lock the form up until you shut down. And what it does is prevent others from accessing, or if it's moved on in the process, it will, prevent the person next in the process from seeing the form until a little while later. One thing that I think might be really helpful, and I think either Gail or Noelle mentioned this when the form was initially launched, is that it makes sense to me, and I think it might be helpful if each campus puts together a list for every major. So this is who the first approver would be, and the academic dean would be the second. So if there is a very specific person you would like to approve substitutions for a particular program, got to make sure and communicate that to your advising community so that they can then get this form routed correctly for the students, right? So that's probably one of the most important things. If you have questions, we really do want to hear from you. We don't want anybody to struggle. This is something where that issues can be solved fairly quickly, fairly easily, if you reach out to us. So my name is Jean Main, as Alexa shared. Either myself or Noelle Rosemilio, who's the manager of enrollment operations. And you can either Teams us or email us is perfectly fine. If you have questions about the DegreeWorks process, you can email them to the CT State DegreeWorks email address, which is right up on the slide. And if you have any questions about a population of students that are maybe moving from a legacy to CT State, and somehow the substitutions, you're kind of struggling to make the credits add up, anything academic in nature is going to go to your campus dean of faculty. I can help you with the form, but I can't tell you if one substitution is appropriate. One course is an appropriate substitution for another. That's not my role here. So please, we ask that you just, make sure that those types of questions are for your dean. They're the best person to help you out. And I think that what we have remaining are questions from you guys.
Yeah. So there is one question in the chat, so I'd urge anybody else who might have a question to go ahead and pop it in so we can address it. But this question is, what happens if it is a TAP substitution and it doesn't say anything about Steve Marcellinus approving it? What will the degree auditor do?
We actually have Abdul also Marai.
Good morning. You're welcome.
And he's the best person to answer that question.
So what we do first, we actually leave a note on the course substitution that we are waiting to verify if Steve approves it. And this is really why it's really important to get Steve approval prior to submit the application, prior to submit the course substitution, because sometimes Steve will say no. So there is no need to start that whole process. And Steve will say no at the end. But back to your question, what we do get in contact with the initiator and check if any of the individual who approved it got a approval from Steve, and if not, then we contact Steve ourselves to basically ask if this is okay.
Terrific, thank you, Abdul.
All righty, and it looks like there haven't been any more questions in the chat. But Jean did share her email address earlier, so if you have anything that you think of later, this presentation has been recorded and the slide deck will also be shared, and that's available on ctstate.edu/webinars.
Can I just say one more thing? It is really important for Steve to approve it first because it will slow down the process for the course substitution massively. Like, we have to wait to get the approval. So if we get the approval prior to submitting the course substitution and have that approval in the comments where it says like, yeah, Steve's approved the course substitution, that will speed up the process like so much.
That makes sense.
All right, well, I want to thank you all for coming out and speaking to us, and we'll get this information released more widely on ctstate.edu/webinars within a day or two. So thank you, and I hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks, Abdul.
Thank you.